know what you may have heard, those rumors that I asked for some perks coming back to the circus, and well, they're not all untrue. I mean, really, would you want to share sleeping quarters with 63 other performers? Absolutely not. There are billboards of me on the side of the road. Why should I share? But that's all right. So I may have insisted about, you know, a private sleeping quarters and a maid and a dressing tent and maybe a reception tent as well. But, you may ask, why a reception tent? Well, as a top star of the circus, you are an ambassador for everybody who wants to come and see you. I have had tea for the President and First Lady, Henry Ford, governors, senators, anybody who's anybody who wants to see behind the circus, behind the scenes, the circus big stars. Now, I do try to give back. In my reception tent, I also have a free school for the children of the circus. And I teach them basic arithmetic, reading, writing, those skills that will make them successful in their lives, whether they stay in the circus or go outside of the circus. And you know, one day I actually had an unusual request. A gentleman by the name of Alfredo came to me. He was from the Mexican circus and a huge star at that, and wanted to learn English so that he could communicate better in America. Now, this gentleman is very motivated, maybe a little obsessive as well, but he was successful at obtaining the triple somersault on the trapeze, and he was only the third person in the world to ever have achieved that goal. Hollywood loved him. He was a stunt double. He starred in his own shows. And he captured my heart, and we fell in love. Now, we did get married, but the one thing that sort of bothered me a little bit was that he still had his ex-wife flying with him on the Flying Cordonas, and that was not acceptable. My nerves could not take something like that. So I insisted that he put a woman named Vera up, and she was kind of she was a nice girl. She was only doing horseback riding things in the show, and I knew she had potential to be a greater star. So I finally convinced Alfredo to put her in and replace his ex-wife, which, you know, looking back, was not the best decision I ever made, but you know, hindsight is 20/20, so they say. That said, the most loyal person in my life was my maid, Mabel. She was always there for me when I went to go to the center ring, and she would take off my cape. She would always have my shoes ready for me when I came back out of the circus room. She also helped me with the caffeine shots. Now, you know, my signature act was to rotate myself around and around my arm. And you know, I do hold the world record of 274 rotations, but that said, every time that happens, I actually bring my arm out of socket. So, you know, caffeine really helps me get through all of those performances, and then the rope burns that I get never are able to heal, so. And I've had my discussions with the doctors, you know, Lillian, you better be careful or you'll get blood poisoning. Oh, why don't you use the other arm? And I look at him and I say, wait a minute, I'm used to seeing the scars and the burns on my right hand, but my left hand is still very lovely, and I am a woman after all. Doctors, what do they know, really? There was one winter, though, that I had to take off about 4 months because I actually did get phlebitis, which is an inflammation of the veins. And it was not a good winter for me at all because I also had double pneumonia. And when I came back, Ringling had the gall to dock my $100 of pay a week, and granted, other performers also had their pay docked as well. But, you know, as one of the top performers, I definitely took an affront to the fact that they were docking my pay for the same great performance that I've always provided. Well, a couple of my performing buddies and I decided we were going to start our own circus. And we started traveling until October of 1929. The great crash. Nobody had the funds to come and see us. There were more people lined outside of the chain-linked fence outside of the tent than actually inside a seat, because nobody could afford to come see us. So, luckily, the following year, Alfredo ended up with a gig doing a winter tour out in Europe, which the economy was a little bit better there. And so I decided to postpone some of my engagements and just go and enjoy the sights. But Alfredo wouldn't go with me, or he insisted that Vera, the woman I helped placed in his troupe to go and perform, apparently he had developed a soft spot for her. Well, I was very desolate between the circus falling, my marriage just going to ruin. I ended up going to visit my mother, who I hadn't seen for 20 years. She had just retired as the aerial Venus in Europe, and we talked about the trials and tribulations of the circus, of life, of love, love. And when it was time for me to go, I had 2 weeks with my mother, and I had an engagement at the Valencia Theater, so as I was about to leave, my maid Mabel came and brought me a telegraph, which was from Alfredo, who said that he was apologizing profusely and said that I was still the love of his life and that everything would be different once he came back from tour. I was very ecstatic. You know what? Maybe there was hope, right? You know, maybe my marriage wasn't completely ruined. And I wanted to prove at the show in Valencia, the Valencia Theater, that I was still on the top of my game. Cue the music, maestro.
New York Times, February 15th, 1931. Circus fall fatal to Lillian Leitzel. Lillian Leitzel, internationally renowned trapeze artist, died this morning as a consequence of a bad fall 2 days ago while performing at the Valencia Theater in Copenhagen. An iron ring holding the ropes of her trapeze gave way, and Miss Leitzel plunged 45 feet to the ground, landing on her head and shoulders. A tribute will be held in 2 days' time at Madison Square Garden.